What's better than one V8 powered race car? How about two? And we've got them all to ourselves. Say hello to a pair of very important cars in the history of Aussie touring car racing. This is quite a special day for us at Motor because we've been given an exclusive opportunity to get up close and personal with both the brand new Gen3 Camaro Supercar as well as a very important car from Aussie racing history. Bob Jane's mother of all muscle cars, the 1971 and 72 Australian Touring Car Championship winning Chevrolet Camaro ZL1. This pair represent 50 years of Aussie touring car racing development, from past to future. So let's take a closer look to see what makes these V8 powered monsters tick, starting with the Gen3 car. Revealed at the Bathurst 1000 last year, this car is currently undergoing an extensive testing regime before it makes its competition debut in 2023. It's built to a new set of rules dubbed Gen 3, and it will replace the Gen 2 cars that are currently racing in the Supercars Championship. One of the biggest changes for Gen 3 has to do with the engines. Now, don't panic, the V8s are staying, but gone are the 5-litre pushrods used by both Ford and Holden teams. Replacing them are units that are more closely representative of the road cars that the races are based on. For Chevrolet, that means an aluminium pushrod design. Dubbed the LTR, this engine has a 5.7 litre capacity and is built using a variety of Chev small block components. For example, the cylinder heads are GM Performance CNC versions of what is found in the LS9 that powered the HSV GTSR W1. Despite having a larger swept capacity, the GM LTR engine is actually physically smaller than the V8 that's going to be used by Ford teams. Being an aluminum engine, more heat is transferred from the block into the water, meaning the engineers have had to increase the radiator size by 30%. Along with the new engine comes a slight reduction in power, but this thing will still be putting nearly 450 kilowatts to the ground. Now, offsetting that slight reduction in power is two things. The first is the fact that the engines will be much cheaper to run and maintain. The second has to do with aerodynamics. There's going to be a massive reduction in downforce, making the Gen 3 cars move around more on track and be much harder to tame. The Gen 3 Camaro will produce a downforce figure in the region of 140 kilos at 200 kilometers an hour. That's about on par with a Porsche GT3 RS road car, which is a really serious bit of kit. For a race car though, it's practically nothing. The gearbox in the Gen 3 car is a 6-speed X-Track unit. Now, supercars have actually bowed to public pressure and kept the same gearbox as the Gen 2 cars. That means drivers will be pulling on this giant sequential shifter to change gears and blipping the throttle themselves with no electronic help whatsoever. Along with the reduction of aero, Supercars has also boosted the Gen 3 car's mechanical grip by lowering the centre of gravity and making the cars wider than the current racers. The track of the Gen 3 car is yet to be finalised, but it currently sits around the 2 metre mark, while the previous car was roughly 1900 millimetres. The wheelbase has also changed, down from roughly 2800 millimetres to a bit more than 2700. That striking new rim design isn't merely for show. The offset has been changed from 52mm to 25mm in order to reduce the likelihood of spindle clashes when drivers rub wheels racing on track. In fact, the spindle itself is also new for Gen 3 to accommodate a smaller wheel nut thread of 45mm, down from 72mm. This in turn has an interesting flow-on effect with a smaller thread, meaning lower tightening torques required from the wheel guns during pit stops, allowing teams to ditch high-pressure nitrogen gas units for electric versions. Moving from a 4-door sedan in the Commodore to a 2-door coupe like the Camaro meant that the bones of the chassis had to fundamentally change. Despite looking like a beefed-up version of the ZL1 that was previously available to buy in Australia, this Gen 3 car didn't actually start life as a road car. Instead, it's a steel floor plan and tubular chassis with quick change front and rear clips that the composite body is then draped over. This Gen 3 car is at its very core a prototype vehicle. Chevrolet racing and supercars are constantly tweaking and adjusting as they conduct testing throughout the year. And when it makes its debut, it will usher in some massive radical changes. But it's not the first of its kind. There was a car that came half a century before that similarly ushered in a massive new step in technology and development. Behold, Bob Jane's 1969 Camaro ZL-1. This is Aussie motorsport royalty. At the heart of this old school racer is a 7-litre naturally aspirated V8, or 427 cubic inches if you so prefer. Despite being 50 years older, this engine actually produces very similar power figures to the Gen 3 car. However, it has a massive torque advantage, sending a reported 800 Newton meters to the rear tyres. Such was the capabilities of the V8 under the hood that the engine got a reputation for destroying its 4-speed gearbox. At Sandown in 1971, the ZL1 ate both its second and third gears, leaving Bob Jane with the top 4th gear as the only usable ratio for most of the race. Using all that torque, he was able to hold on to the car's first ever victory. Across 2 years in the ATCC, the ZL1 and Jane either finished on the podium or retired from the race entirely. That includes when the governing body tried to cripple the Camaro by outlawing its 7-litre engine. Jane then downsized to a 350 cubic inch V8 and he still won the championship. Oh, and that 7-litre engine? That was then sold to Frank Gardner, who used it to win the 1973 British Saloon Car Championship. Talk about a winning history. Unlike the Gen 3 car, this actually started life as a road car, which is all the more impressive when you consider that it's a genuine Camaro ZL1. The original ZL1 was ultra rare, with only 69 ever being built. In fact, a couple of years ago, one sold at auction for $1.5 million. Of the 69, this was the 33rd off the production line. As an interesting aside, this particular car has had a fascinating life. After it was driven by Bob Jane in the ATCC, it was then turned into a sports sedan, before then later being further modified into a drag car. It was then painstakingly restored over a 4-year period into the car you see before you now. Bob Jane and his legendary Camaro fought an all-out war with Alan Moffat's Mustang. The pair waged battle at racetracks all across the country. And now 50 years later, Chevrolet Racing is hoping to add a new chapter to the history of the Camaro in Australia. Let's hope it's as fast and loud as the first one.